Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salome Esega. I'm the director of New Inc., New Museum's cultural incubator for creative practitioners working across art, design, technology, science, architecture, and all of the things. I'm here to introduce our last session for DEMO2025. I can't believe we're here at the last session after 3 incredible days of talks, panels, performances. We're coming to a close. I've learned so much over the last 3 days from over 100 festival participants. I've learned that new worlds are possible, that new ways of making, sensing, and working are possible. Today, we're going to hear from our creative science track members, a track of artists and researchers who are engaging scientific inquiry to advance storytelling. Kinda Studios, a neuroscience studio driving creative impact. EcoRove, a multimedia research project examining the politics of critical zones. Wendi Yan and Darren Zhu, a collaborative duo that are blending their interests in synthetic biology and technology. Alvaro Azcarraga, an artist and researcher exploring the history of scientific colonialism. SPOLIA, a research-led studio building tools for an era of complex crises. Their presentations will be followed by a group conversation moderated by their mentor in residence, Dr. Elizabeth Hénaff. Before the creative science members present, their session kicks off with a keynote conversation with our special guest, Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson, moderated by New Museum Chief Brand Officer and New Inc. co-founder, Karen Wong. Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson is a marine biologist, policy expert, writer, and teacher working to help create the best possible climate futures. She co-founded and leads Urban Ocean Lab, a think tank for the future of coastal cities. She's the author of What If We Get It Right? Visions of Climate Futures, and she co-authored the Blue New Deal, a roadmap for including the ocean in climate policy. We invited Ayana because in every way she works to fight for art, gathering, telling, and most important, hope. So let's welcome Ayana and Karen to the stage.
Fantastic. Demo 2025. Just see me as the Asian Oprah, my fantasy. Dr. Johnson, we're going to do a couple of softball questions first just to get the vibe going.
All right, loosen me up.
Okay. Growing up in Brooklyn, what toys did you play with?
I was a big Legos kid. My dad was an architect, so there was a lot of Legos. I had a lot of dolls, but I just was like, what am I supposed to do with these? I don't have that kind of imagination.
Okay, so from Legos, we want to know, if you were a sea creature, which one would you be and why?
Octopus, they're the smartest. They can make independent decisions with each arm. They have a distributed brain, and they have 3 hearts.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. Don't eat them. They're too
them.
smart to eat. Yeah.
Ponyo or Little Mermaid?
I don't know what Ponyo is.
Oh.
Okay,
let's just go. Let's go to.
I do love a musical. I was like a
let's do an
theater
easier
kid.
one. Barbie or Oppenheimer?
I actually haven't. I've only seen Oppenheimer.
Okay, freestyle or breaststroke?
Breaststroke, because I want to know what's going on, but doggy paddle style breaststroke, head above the water the whole time. I'm like, what's going on, you guys? It's a cute little swim.
What do you do to de-stress?
Not answer rapid fire questions in front of 100 people. I walk in the woods behind my house.
Nice, okay.
I don't live in Brooklyn anymore, obviously.
But going back to New York, what's your favorite nature green space in the city?
I'm from Fort Greene, old Fort Greene.
Right.
So Fort Greene Park is where I learned to ride my bike, where I had my first kiss, so that's and where my parents used to play tennis in the 70s in white bell bottoms. It's the cutest thing imaginable.
Love it. So you're really well known for your mixtapes. So what's on repeat right now on your Spotify list?
I've been checking out Swamp Dogg. Do you know who this is? He's actually playing at Pioneer Works tomorrow and releasing a cookbook they published with him. So I've just been deep in the Swamp Dogg, the first DOGG artist in the archives, yeah.
And what are you reading right now?
I haven't started a new book yet. I just finished a few days ago a book called Oh Sinners that just came out by Nicole Cuffey about a black soldier from Vietnam who ends up as a cult leader in the redwoods of California a few decades later. It's fascinating.
Wow, it sounds like the next Netflix series. And then favorite climate-friendly meal to cook?
These are like not softball questions. I just love a salad. I love just like we're in like entering summer, so I'm like getting excited about farmers markets, and I personally think that like watermelon and potato chips are a meal, so I'm going to be eating a lot of that this summer.
You heard it here first, watermelon and chips. Okay, we're going to now go to the meaty portion of our conversation. Here are some meaty questions. New Ink member, playwright, and interactive artist Risa Puno shared with us yesterday a project based on dissecting and processing Asian femme rage. Rage is something that can be collective and metabolized. Climate change advocates have often used tools to instill anger, fear, what we know as disaster porn, and you are completely flipping the script. You believe most people are motivated by love for the future. Can you just unpack your theory for us?
So I guess I don't think of it as either or, right? I think fear of a bad future is really motivating for some people, but for others that's paralyzing. So it's not that I think one is better. I think we need many different forms of communication that are rooted in the whole spectrum of emotions. So there's something for everyone. I think the problem is that most of the climate communication that people are receiving is the bad news. And there's not nearly enough, I would argue, talking about solutions. Okay, like this is where we're at. Where do we go from here? Like what are we supposed to do to make less bad stuff happen? And we know that only about 1% of TV news minutes are about climate change. And of those, only about a quarter of those minutes talk about solutions at all. And sort of the big open secret is that we basically have all the climate solutions we need. It's just a matter of how quickly and how justly we're going to implement those. And so I feel like I'm part of the rebalancing of the conversation. Like I'm not going to deny all the disasters that are happening, and like we should absolutely be motivated to stop those. But also, what if we get it right? Like, what does that look like? And I think the lack of a really deep societal conversation about the world we want to build has slowed us down because people are afraid of a big blank question mark future, right? Why would you run full tilt toward a void? Like, that's dangerous, evolutionarily unadvisable. And so I think the more we can paint like increasingly detailed and concrete pictures of what the best possible versions of the future could look like, the more we can welcome people into saying like, oh, I actually see a place for myself in that future, or the people that I love, and I can now start to see how I could help build it.
Right. Kind of staying on that.
But I'm full of rage too.
You're full of rage.
It's just one of many emotions.
So last summer you produced and curated a variety show at the Brooklyn Museum where dancing, humor, magic tricks, hula hoops, spoofing runway fashion were all in service of your vibe for environmental advocacy. And then last week, David Byrne hosted his second annual variety show, which was weird, delightful, and uplifting to promote Reasons to be Cheerful, which is a platform for solution journalism. So is the variety show format the new way to reimagine how we activate our communities? I just want to know.
I hope so.
How did that show come about, and do you have plans for a second edition?
So when you write a book, you're supposed to do a book tour, and I thought that sounded really boring to like go to bookstores and read my book aloud to different people. That's why I was just thinking, well, if I have to do a book tour, like what's the most fun possible version of that for me? And I was like, well, if I can invite and get all my friends involved, and if we can figure out a way to do it where we take climate seriously without taking ourselves seriously. That's the mission. And so I basically called in every favor I had. The actor Jason Sudeikis from Ted Lasso fame was my co-host for these variety shows at the Brooklyn Museum and in LA, and hired a comedy writer, and got my supermodel friend Cameron Russell to like do a runway walk wearing a heat pump costume. And we had magicians and singer-songwriters and trivia competitions, and had everyone filling out their own Venn diagram to find their role. Like, what are you good at? What needs doing? And what brings you joy? And figure out like how they could contribute. And I feel like we need there's a catharsis in rage and tears and grief. But there's also a catharsis in collective laughter. And I feel like we just need a little more goofiness. And so I'm bummed I missed this David Byrne show, because I feel like lately the art that inspires me most is just people being super freaking weird. Like the Swamp Dog documentary, you have to see, it is so weird. And like the Sun Ra documentary, extremely weird. And I'm like, I could be so much weirder. And I think this like not taking ourselves too seriously is part of the secret. So producing that from nothing to 3 different variety shows with different scripts and different casts in 3 different cities was a lot, and kind of like ruined my summer. Last year, trying to have a summer this year. So this year, the plan is a slightly smaller scale, which is I want to host dance parties, climate solution dance parties, like maybe dress as your favorite climate solution, could be low-key, like abstract, or like really go for it, and host them in aquariums and natural history museums, so you have this like context of the natural world around you. So I'm building those partnerships with those institutions now. So stay tuned, September and October, come dance with me.
Love this. So this idea of...
Meet your new climate besties on the dance floor.
So this idea of fluidity and hybridity is core to your book, and what if we get it right? It's just an amalgamation of diverse voices. But it's interesting that as an academic and scientist, typically associated with rigor and protocols, what have been your inspirations and influences that allow you to embrace so many different mediums for storytelling?
I guess I've just always have embraced trial and error as a good approach to life. And so I'm just interested in trying all these different ways to reach people. And a few years ago, I had this very slow realization that I think my role in climate work, in the climate movement, is to just welcome as many people in as possible. Like whatever is the opposite of gatekeeping, I'm like, hey, come in, we need you. Like, what skills do you have to offer? Like, what you got? Like, where do you fit in? And so that requires a certain amount of like creativity to just figure out how can I be most useful is always the question that I'm asking myself. And I think that, is just gonna have a ever evolving set of answers. Like I never wanted to write a book. But then I signed a book deal and bought a house, and I couldn't give them money back, so I had to write the book. But I figured out that I could write the book because who can answer this question as a single person? What if we get it right? And so then I realized that I could just interview all the smartest people I knew and transcribe those interviews. So the book is actually 20 very, very heavily edited interviews with lawyers and community organizers and farmers and financiers and tech executives and nonprofit leaders and policymakers who are doing the work of building the future that we need and showing us the way forward. And so everything I do is very much about showing what's working, building the team. Everything is collaboration, everything is co-creation, and it's just more fun that way. And I think the more deeply I collaborate with artists, I think the better that is, certainly for me, but hopefully for the ripples that the work can have too.
I mean, as a community of New Ink, we see ourselves as weirdos and very empathetic. So, here we are where coders, designers, poets, architects, DJs, and activists, and including a couple of demo participant shout-outs, Anna Campbell, who is preserving queer trans history on Reese Beach, and SPOLIA and Beam, who have designed sculptural beacons transmitting deep-sea soundscapes to make ocean data less abstract. So,
this is very cool
right?
stuff.
So yeah, we're going to hear from them momentarily. But what role can the artist truly play to influence public policy? It's a big question the New Museum's been thinking about for more than a decade.
I love this question. I think about it a lot, actually, and I think we have some great examples of what that looks like in terms of TV, especially. Like, one of the iconic examples is the TV show Will and Grace, just showing gay people being normal and delightful and haphazard like all of us. And that was actually the most popular TV show on military bases, US military bases, and like that paved the way for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. When President Obama was like, but can they handle it? It's like, yeah, they're all watching Will and Grace every day, it's gonna be fine. And so we don't normally think about the ways in which the art that we create leads to these, opening these windows of policy change. And of course, then the legalization of gay marriage also followed from that. But I think more broadly, the role that arts can play is to just expand our understanding of what's possible and how we want to be, from my particular lens, how we want to be good citizens of planet Earth. And to see different versions of what the future could look like if we get it right. I'm always eager for the delightful futurist art. And there's an artist who created a set of incredible works that are in this book, Ola Lake and Jay Foos. They're all online if you want to check them out at getitright.earth. On the website you can see them all, but he's helped me and others envision this version of the future, and also my anti-apocalypse mixtape you can listen to on there too. So I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like the way we've gotten into this environmental pickle, to put it very euphemistically, is a failure of imagination. And so we do really need artists to help us with that.
I love that you just used the word citizen and what does citizenship mean in this day and age. But I'm hoping you could share with us what are two things we can do today to change our behavior, to make our oceans healthier, and then what is a long-term solution that should be on our radar? And this is your last question, so breathe a sigh of relief.
Well, we're here in New York when everyone's talking about the mayoral election, so vote for people who actually really care about the environment. It's great that there's ranked choice voting now here, so just really think about that, like what's their climate platform? And from an ocean perspective, I think a lot about like, how do we elect people for city council, for every level of government, who are going to help us become more resilient in the face of, there will be a next superstorm Sandy. Sea level is rising even if we magically zeroed out our greenhouse gas emissions today, right? We have to adapt to the world as it is, and doing nothing just makes all of it worse, right? So politics, not just voting, but actually engaging with the people who are supposed to represent us throughout the year is one that I'd think about. Like, do we have the right bike lanes, composting, public transit, et cetera, investments in our community are things that like you actually can influence much more easily than what's going on at the federal level. And to your question of like, what can people do to help the ocean? The biggest threat that the ocean faces is climate change. The ocean has absorbed about a third of the carbon dioxide that's been emitted by burning greenhouse gases, and that has made the ocean more acidic. Like, we have literally changed the pH of the entire ocean by burning fossil fuels. And the ocean has absorbed about 90% of the heat that those greenhouse gases have trapped in the atmosphere. And like every species, ocean species are adapted to a pretty narrow temperature range. Obviously, that's bad for corals. It's bad for species that smell their way to navigate because the chemistry of seawater has changed, right? It's bad for things that are trying to grow shells because it's hard to grow shells in more acidic water. So everything we can do to address the climate crisis, and I'm not going to say like just focus on lowering your individual carbon footprint, because we should all do that, but we need to be doing much bigger things than that. So I guess I would say, think about what you can do beyond your individual choices and what happens in your household. We have to think in these like ever expanding circles of influence in our professional lives. How can you make your job into a climate job? Like, how can you help the organization where you work be better across their whole supply chain or operations or procurement or events or communications, right? Or project management? All of that really matters. How, as a citizen, as a member of a community, as a member of all the organizations that you're part of, whether that's like sports fandoms or religious groups or neighborhoods, think bigger than yourselves about the ripples that you can make, because we have the solutions we need. I'm just going to say that one more time. It's just a matter of how quickly we're going to get there and to make sure that we all benefit in this transformation from an extractive economy and society to a regenerative one.
That's amazing. Think big, vote, and please give it up for Dr. Johnson for being here with us today. Woo!
Thank you for having me.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here, kick off the Creative Science Talks. Before I begin, though, I wanted to invite you all to gently close down your eyes. And I want to invite you to see if you can notice your heartbeat. You might want to put your hand on your chest or your fingertips on the inside of your wrist. And if you can't feel anything at all, that's completely fine. Perhaps you can notice something else, your palms sweating, or your stomach rumbling. And for some of you, this might be a difficult ask, and you're not alone. You can gently blink open your eyes. Actually, up to 40% of people can't consciously notice their heartbeat. But I'm sure everyone in this room has had that experience from a piece of art, a live piece of music, for example, or a film, perhaps so powerful, it felt like your heart was bursting from your chest, making it impossible not to feel. Because these experiences of art, they move us, they change us. And now, there's science to show that it supports our health. Maybe some of you have heard of it, the burgeoning field of neuroaesthetics, or neuroarts as it's sometimes called. Well, to bring us all on the same page, neuroaesthetics is the science of how our brains and bodies respond to the world around us, our environments, culture, art, and design. And it explores, whether we're conscious of it or not, our brains and bodies are constantly responding to the sounds, the smells, the frequencies, the shapes, textures, and densities all around us, affecting how we feel, act, and behave on a daily basis. And in the last 10 years, this field of science has exploded in academic circles. But nobody was translating this into the daily fabric of our lives, where it can make meaningful impact on the ground. It was all theoretical, and, well, we wanted to do something about it. 5 years later, I am Robin Lando, and alongside Catherine Templer-Lewis, I'm the co-founder of Kinda Studios, the first neuroaesthetics studio and lab, translating this neuroscience research into real-world creative and cultural projects to support our health. We're an all-women, interdisciplinary team working at the intersection of design and data, sensation and science, and we blend worlds across disciplines to create a collective intelligence. Because the world doesn't work in silos. It's multidisciplinary and it's multisensory, just like us. And so the process that we use is called science-informed design. It takes a proven evidence base and it turns it directly into a felt experience. And this allows us to drive measurable impact and change through creating moments that move people emotionally and physiologically. Because the science shows that when you move someone, you change them. And so we started off consulting for some of the biggest brands, platforms, and studios in the world. And then we launched our own real-world neuroscience lab, which uses the latest mobile brain-body sensing like EEG headsets and physiology biosensors to test the experiences that people are having in the real-world environments that they're taking place. And we've become leaders doing this work. And now we're at this really exciting moment where we're bringing the two together to create our own work. But when we're using these technologies, we're doing it differently. We're not using technology for technology's sake or brain-body sensing because it's cool and, well, the brain, it's sexy. We're using it as a gateway in so that people can learn something new about themselves, so they can increase their states of connection, so that we can use cultural experiences themselves as health interventions, and so we can capture data around these so we can learn, iterate, prove, and shift the frameworks. When it comes to measurement and data, we're already doing this in our own silos anyways, right? Academia and culture, they're doing it independently. And now we can bring the two together for greater impact. So now's the point where you might be thinking, theoretically, this all sounds great, but what does it look like in practice? Well, I'll take you through some of the research. As I mentioned, up to 40% of people can't consciously notice their heartbeat. They are disconnected from their bodies. And this is connected to the science of interoception, our ability to sense, notice, and interpret our internal bodily sensations. And a disconnection here is linked to nearly every single brain and body-based disorder. But when I'm disconnected from myself, I'm also disconnected to you, people, and planet. Interoception is linked to empathy and experiences that provide safe opportunities as a gateway in to increase these felt sensations are proven to help support this. So we have been researching and building experiences to support this over the last few years. We started with Inspirit, an audiovisual, oh, that was the slide that was supposed to happen before. We started with Inspirit, an audiovisual breathing experience that allows people to connect to their breath. And you can experience Inspirit here in the demo, and of course, yes, this is the audio that you heard at the beginning. And Inspirit has been tested within our lab and with Goldsmiths University to reduce anxiety by up to 20%. Then we launched Synchronies, an experience synchronizing the heartbeats of people and planet. And excitingly, Synchronies was just selected as a case study for the World Health Organization upcoming policy brief on the environment. Thank you. Synchronies was also shown to increase the synchronization of people's heartbeats most in the segments of the experience that involved the environment. But just 2 weeks ago, we went further. We launched Your Inner Symphony, a new installation at the Barbican Centre in London as part of their new major immersive exhibition, Feel the Sound. And dotted throughout the exhibition, our series of sensing stations turns internal physiological data into personalized visualizations. Audiences place their hand on the sensor that you're seeing here, and in real time, their data gets reflected into unique personal visualization as a reflection of their internal biorhythms. This orb you're seeing here transforms. The heart rate controls the speed of movement, heart rate variability controls its shape, and their sweat response controls its color, purple or blue for more relaxed, pink and yellow for more energized. And our goal from the experience is this: if people can walk away with even just one small enhanced understanding of their body, we know that this leads to knock-on health benefits. But what's more is that we're tracking it. Over the next 3 months, we're going to be gathering all of this physiological data in what we hope will become one of the largest ever real-world cultural data sets collected. And next year, the exhibition, it tours to Japan, where we hope to explore this and expand it into a cross-cultural exploration to analyze these findings, feeding it back into the scientific method, and making a meaningful contribution to science, culture, and society. So, what's next? Well, at Kinda to date, we've been hard at work, working with brands and institutions and academics, and we've built a successful revenue-generating business. But we're in a defining moment. We're leading a new movement, and we realize there's more we want to do, that our work is bigger. We've already started with Your Inner Symphony and Synchronies and Inspirit, and a new pilot we've created called Eve, the EEG visualizer of emotions, which turns live brainwave data into a visual design language. But we want to expand. We're ready to build out our own creative research institute that will allow us the flexibility to do things like expand our biosensing code, plugging it into a range of products, programs, and experiences, and close the feedback loop, feeding it back into the academic scientific method as I talked about. So, how can you help? Well, to get there, we need to actively invest. So we're inviting aligned organizations and institutions with common goals to help make that happen. Join our movement, and let's grow it together. Because we're leading a new era and shaping a cultural shift where art and science can work together to reimagine care and prove that has a measurable impact for change. Just think, what would society look like if cultural experiences were not just leisure activities, but part of our systems of care? Thank you so much. You can find all of the information on this slide. We've got a rockin' newsletter you can sign up to, but I think it's more exciting to have a conversation, so come find me afterwards if any of what I spoke about spoke to you. Thank you.
Marhaba. Yalla habibi.
These are the endemic non-human sounds of Jabal Amel and Wadi al-Taim, otherwise known as South Lebanon. They will be with us for the duration of this presentation.
What if an archive was a living, breathing terrain? What if documentary production evaded extraction to return financial and intellectual propriety to humans and non-humans who steward these living archives?
We started EcoRove as a means for inquiry. We ask, how can documentary practice disrupt, support, retell, and revitalize? How can artistic practice be a tool for working with land, with memory, and with communities who are often spoken over or entirely ignored? I am Iyad Abu Ghaida.
And I am M. Joseph.
And we started EcoRove in 2020 with our co-founder, Jumana Abbas. Some words from Jumana now.
We are farmers, architects, filmmakers, ecologists, curators, artists, educators, and organizers. EcoRove is a collaborative multimedia research initiative examining critical zones where ecological collapse, military occupation, and extractive economies converge. We came together through shared research on trees native to our Levantine ancestral lands and their intertwined environmental and ideological struggle. This evolved into collaborative multimedia research practice focused on the politics of critical zones and the interdependence of the human and the non-human within them. Our mission is to empower communities to share knowledge and narratives that reframe eco-sociopolitical dynamics using documentary, scientific, artistic, and technological methods grounded in indigenous science, storytelling, protest, and ecological materiality.
We miss you, Jumana. Cedar Exodus is a transdisciplinary research project that traces the historical, symbolic, and ecological displacement of the Lebanese cedar tree across colonial and climatic regimes in Lebanon. The work was exhibited at the New Museum in 2023 and is currently featured in the Year 11 Creative Science publication available for viewing in the demo store.
Foraging Alternative Ecosystem is a project that revives ancestral plant knowledge through seasonal foraging, seed dispersal devices, and cooking tutorial. It was featured at the 2022 Tallinn Architecture Biennial and the 2024 New Ink Creative Science Dinner.
Landkeepers documents indigenous land stewards in Lebanon, Palestine, and Syria as they resist displacement and scorched earth tactics by the Israeli entity. A preliminary tapestry and audio piece is currently on view as part of the Creative Science Showcase, and the project will culminate in a 90-minute co-collaborative documentary. We are pursuing this work with generous support from the Alcarraga Arts Foundation.
These projects are not about romanticizing landscape, but about embodying survivor, reciprocity, and care on the edges of collapse due to military, financial, ecological, and cultural occupation. Each work is a note towards a wider ecosystem of liberation, co-collaboration, and rewarding.
We're always asking new questions, and as of late, the following questions have been at the center of our work. How can EcoRove evolve into a wider, more dynamic platform, one that channels research, aesthetics, and immersive storytelling into tangible support for the lands and communities we are rooted in?
How can EcoRove grow as a living ecosystem where researchers, artists, thinkers, and land stewards not only collaborate, but build power together, exchanging knowledge, tools, and strategies across borders?
And how can we return resources, commission, credit, and infrastructure to the places and peoples that colonial and capitalist systems have historically extracted from without acknowledgement?
We imagine a studio with a physical anchor and an expansive digital reach, a platform where ecological storytelling is co-created and not exclusively retained, where local and indigenous knowledge is honored, resourced, and woven into collective futures, where technologies are shaped with frontline communities and not imposed upon them.
This is what we are building. Modular frameworks for collaborative documentary and research production, licensing models that ensure contributors retain agency, authorship, and profit, shared tools for regenerative media from open source seed mapping to decolonial archiving,
And lastly, networks of solidarity, led by researchers, artists, organizers from the global south and the diasporas, and those whose lands and lives have been shaped by systems for the global north. We are eager to situate EcoRove alongside others doing work in a similar way, such as Algae, Green Southerners, Arawiya, MIT Co-Creation Studio, and the Indigenous Screen Office, so we may expand our reach and impact across landscapes and borders. We are looking for partners who see storytelling not as content but as infrastructure, for donors and investors who understand that resisting ecological collapse requires reimagining how we narrate it.
and for those who believe in EcoRove as a living platform, one rooted in solidarity, creative rigor, and ancestral intelligence. EcoRove is not just a platform for stories, it is a platform for strategies, for returning knowledge and resources where they belong, and for reimagining how we create together against geographies broken by empire.
Come create this future with us, and we'd like to chat with you further at our Creative Science Showcase installation.
Thank you to the New Wing team for supporting us this year and having us as a part of DEMO2025, to our mentors Marissa Prefer and Elizabeth Hénaff, for guiding our work and research with such dedication and care. And to all of you for listening, while we have you, lastly.
لا للتدخل الأجنبي في لبنان وسوريا.
Hands off Syria, hands off Lebanon,
الحرية لفلسطين.
and free Palestine. Thank you.
Hi, New Wing. Thank you for having us. I'm Wendi.
And I'm Darren. We're collaborators inspired by this term, knowledge art. Pretentious, we know, but at least we spared y'all the original German version. But what it means to us is this more creative form of knowledge making, one where we are unconstrained by existing methods of science. My background is in synthetic biology and metascience, where I've worked on a range of projects from research to biotech startups and new media projects, where I've explored more speculative frontiers of science.
And I studied history of science, which inspires me to make alternative science fiction media using game engine and animation software. So we're both very interested in both the methods and the fictions of science, and we explore them through our projects that explore the alternative past and potential futures of science.
We'd like to start off by introducing a few of our individual projects that explore this map of speculative knowledge art and how that shapes our collective projects. Evolution of Human Science is excerpted from this Ted Chiang short story where he posits a future where science has become too cognitively complex for ordinary humans to do. Using a mix of generative video models and frame interpolation allows us to imagine this future history of research that's conducted by what Chiang calls metahuman scientists. Ends of Science is this video essay that plays with a knowledge graph to explore how artificial intelligence changes the nature of scientific inquiry. We believe that AI has the potential to accelerate the gaps between new theories and new discoveries. And to help resolve these epistemological gaps requires treating AI as a kind of model organism, something that we can probe and try to understand the kinds of knowledge that's being produced often from this black box. And the Xenoplex is the speculative research complex that seeks to simulate the origins of life on Earth and elsewhere in the universe. Given these uncertain boundaries of life, what are the necessary and sufficient conditions for life and its emergence?
And I often engineer visual narratives of science that's inspired by existing research. So these are xenobots, which are biologically modified robots done without genetic engineering that scientists have been making. Inspired by that, I made this video that explores the sci-fi aesthetic of a high-tech future at the microscopic level. My recent project for the Bergeron Institute explores further the visual space between imaging and imagining within scientific storytelling. So I worked with MIT scientists who have been looking for life in the clouds of Venus. I worked with them to use 3D software, game engine, visual effects tools to make the fictional world that's inspired by their scientific research. I also used AI tools to kind of hallucinate on top of that, adding a narrative layer to the scanning electron microscope images that the scientists provided to imagine the possible life forms that they might find one day. So both of our practices have touched on a lot on the emergent properties of collective intelligence and future of life, and we like to use speculation and simulation as our method to effectively loosen the conceptual space of what we mean by science and what we mean by scientist. But at the same time, we're wondering, can we take this into a more holistic practice where the work is not just an art object, but also social actions? So about 2 years ago, we started working with our friend, Will Ferdinand, and other collaborators on this collective R&D project called Biotopy. It sits between art installation, game demo, technical infrastructure, and a scientific method.
Biotopy started out with this question: what happens when people around the world can start playing with microbes using affordable bioreactors as some kind of game console? The project uses a 3D printed device that allows you to control the stir rate, temperature, nutrients, and other things inside this little bioreactor where the microbes grow. We've developed this playful interface where the microbes are almost like this Tamagotchi game character, where we blur the lines between collaborative play and scientific research. We imagine a world where players around the world can contribute to research by interacting with the microbes around them, whether those are from food and beverage fermentation, their personal microbiomes, or even environmental samples.
So in our R&D process, we looked at research from a lot of different disciplines, including human biology interaction, biotic games, citizen science projects, and also history of science, history of objectivity. So we also organized our research thinking into an essay that we published in Interplay.
It's been really important for us to share Biotopy with a wide range of audiences and locations. We first shared the prototype at Harvard's Unfiguring Conference on Experiments in Science and Art last spring, as well as at a talk at the Santa Fe Institute. Then at New Ink's Creative Science Dinner last fall, we were able to showcase Biotopy at Noosphere Arts, where we were able to collect fish ferment samples from Chef Shaw's recipes that night, as well as site-specific water samples from the neighboring Newtown Creek where algal blooms often occur. Then in March this year, we took Biotopy to the Seed AI House at South by Southwest, where we showcased it in front of a really wide range of audience, including policymakers, researchers, large corporations. And then most recently, we started taking Biotopy internationally. We just showed it in Japan last month, where we put it in front of a new creative lab called Mesh Studio, incubated at Digital Garage, as well as this biohacker space called BioClub Tokyo. And finally, we brought it to this artist residency in rural Nagano Prefecture, nearby these ancient soy sauce and miso fermentation breweries.
Next steps for us is we want to host both in-person and virtual game jams. We want to distribute game jam kits that would include the bioreactors with our custom game engine so that more people can build their own biotopia experiences. Super thankful for our sponsors and supporters, Digital Architecture Lab, Cosmos Institute, and most importantly, New Inc. for helping us incubate this project and bring it to more places in the past year. If anything resonated for you, if you find it super interesting, scan the QR code for Biotopia, and our socials are here. Please come find us, email us. We would love to talk more and hear your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the official Spore magazine launch. This magazine began as a question. What if we made something that just didn't simplify biology, but made it more alive? My name is Alvaro Azcarraga, and I'm a queer Mexican bioartist and researcher based in Brooklyn. My background is in molecular cell biology as well as art. I spent the last few years working on the intersection of living systems, scientific protocols, and creative inquiry. I'm also the founder and director of Spore magazine. This is more than a magazine, it's a beginning, a spore, if you will, something small, potent, alive with possibility. Today, I want to share how this all started, where it's going, and why your curiosity matters. So let's start with the fungus. Let me introduce you to Mycosarcoma myedis, formerly known as Ustilago myedis. This organism infects maize, creating black swollen galls that are considered a delicacy in Mexico and an agricultural pest in the US. Also known as Huitlacoche, it occupies a strange space celebrated by some, destroyed by others. I first came to love this organism during my time at the Koala Center for Biological Arts. I was working on the Ustilago myedis project, exploring how domestication and genetic engineering echo colonial histories. Why do we study certain organisms in the lab while ignoring their cultural or ecological significance? This fungus became my collaborator and now my metaphor. It helped me see how biology, when viewed critically, can tell much bigger stories about power, value, and creativity. So now, what is Spore Magazine? Spore Magazine is a platform for stories at the intersection of biological sciences, art, and cultural critique. It's a home for conversations that don't quite fit in the lab or the gallery alone. A space to explore science as a deeply cultural, personal, and political terrain. We are here to challenge disciplinary silos, to invite collaborative inquiry, and to insist on complexity. Whether through risograph printed pages, public programming, or multimedia content, Spore seeks to make the strange beauty and critical urgency of the biological arts visible. That's why we begin with issue 0. 0 is not just a placeholder, it's generative. In Mayan cosmology, 0 is renewal, a circle, a shell. In computing, it's foundational. Even some organisms like bees and crows understand the significance of 0. And in Spore, it's an invitation. Issue 0 is themed around water as a beginning. Water is where biology starts. Its molecular properties, adhesion, cohesion, surface tension, aren't just facts in a textbook. They are the reason why life exists. But water is also political, poetic, and planetary. It connects us, shapes us, and defines how and where we live. So what will you find in this first issue? We begin with a framing essay, one that sets a tone for Spore magazine and reflects on how we build knowledge collaboratively. We then move on into a recorded roundtable conversation between Dr. Elizabeth Hénaff, 2 scientists from the Interstate Environmental Commission who monitor the waterways of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, Stephen Biazzo and Samantha Wilder. Together, they reflect on water monitoring quality, infrastructure, and the hidden politics of environmental data. And finally, we close with a reflection on Dr. Elizabeth Hénaff's and the Scope Collective's immersive art channel, installation channel, which took place at BioBat Art Space last year. This piece used living sediment from the Gowanus Canal and projection mapping to invite viewers into microbial landscapes. Going beyond text, it was sensation, presence, and movement. The issue weaves between text and textures, rigor and curiosity. It's designed to provoke but not conclude. Something you might have noticed that was not defined is the term bioart. We are working on expanding on the idea of what bioart can be, not as illustrative or as decorative, but as a form of active research. Our contributors could include scientists, artists, ecologists, dancers, philosophers, or designers. This is not just about displaying knowledge, it's about co-creating it. At Spore magazine, we believe that collaboration isn't just practical, it's political. Who gets to do science and who gets to narrate biology? We're rethinking how credit is given to people, organisms, tools, and environments. How do we acknowledge invisible labor, emotional infrastructure, microbial agents, and environmental conditions? These are the questions we want to keep asking together with you. Our upcoming issues may explore themes such as gut flora, synthetic life, and multi-species storytelling. We'll publish interviews, essays, speculative fictions, and lab notebooks, always grounded in place, curiosity, and care. If any of this resonates with you, stay connected. We're building this network slowly, deliberately, and in a relational manner. Scan the QR code on screen now and sign up for our newsletter. Follow us on social media and reach out if you have a project or question you want to share. Spore is an ecosystem, and ecosystems thrive through feedback, generosity, and exchange. We want to hear from you. And of course, if you want to support what we're doing, grab a copy of Issue 0 or pick up a trucker hat. Take home a tote. Our magazine is risograph printed by the brilliant Isaac Reuter from Corporate Earth in Long Beach, California, and every sale helps us to keep producing and printing future issues, paying our contributors, and hosting future public programming that brings together science and culture in new ways. To close, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for caring about that messy middle space between art and science, for believing that it matters who tells the story and how. This magazine began as a question: what if we made something that didn't simplify biology, but made it more alive? What if we stayed with the trouble, as Donna Haraway says, and didn't rush to resolve it? This is our first Spore. It may be small, but it's alive, and it's already spreading. From this zero, we begin. Thank you.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Alvaro. Go support Spore magazine. We're SPOLIA, an R&D design and technology studio. And I'm Garrett.
I'm Eric.
And our practice goes between different disciplines, connecting ideas together to create more creative and resilient futures.
In practice, this means our research moves fluidly between the digital and the physical, between built material systems, and also self-published software tools. This year, our focus has been on the concept of intelligences, beyond the artificial and the human. For the Venice Biennale, we looked at how we could unlock the intelligences embedded within material systems through a digital material library we developed in collaboration with Future Assemblies and MIT. And we've also been looking into the intelligences of living systems, specifically how we could use computation to better understand the complexities of natural systems so that we can move more towards regenerative ways of living. Our first project on this, titled SPOLIA, or titled SimLink, is available in the demo store to check out. Which brings us to our latest research interest, which is in the alien and the unknown intelligences, specifically those of the deep sea.
And today we'd like to introduce you to our exhibit Beacons, which is done in collaboration with Beam and Luke Henderson, and is right around the corner if you want to go check it out after the series of talks. And before we get into it, we'd also like to thank New Inc., the Simons Foundation, curators, producers, and mentors that all help to support this work. So to set the stage around what the deep sea even is, I want you to imagine crushing pressure. There's pretty much no sunlight after 1,000 meters, and it's nearly freezing year-round. And it's on a time scale that's fully different than our own, where it's been untouched for millennia. We only know roughly around 1% of the deep sea that's been scientifically studied. Yet, at the same time, it's been given a price tag of up to $16 trillion to start mining the seabed floor. You might have seen in the news just a little over a month ago that the United States released an executive order to accelerate the potential of deep sea mining, specifically in this region called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, which is between Hawaii and Mexico, spanning 1.5 million square miles and is 16,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. This is in international waters, so countries have taken different reservations of exploration licenses to start to see the potential of deep sea mining in this region. And it lines up pretty closely with the actual density of minerals that are abundant on the sea floor. To paint a picture of what that actually looks like, they're kind of these lumps of rocks. They're actually metals, and they're important for their interest in mining and why they're so valuable is due to their composite of cobalt, copper, manganese, and nickel, which are all essential for the production of batteries in electric vehicles and for decarbonizing transportation. But these aren't just minerals, they're not just products. These are processes that form over tens of millions of years. This one formed 60 million years ago around a shark tooth.
There are trillions of these nodules scattered across the seafloor, and they're not just static lumps of metal. They're actually homes, anchors to the living beings and diversities of ecosystems that exist there. Our understanding of the space is very limited. It's estimated that 95% of the species we catalog through our expeditions are new to science, new to us. But what we do understand is that over 50% of these species rely on and physically tether to the nodules and use them as a way to survive. Currently, all of this is at risk of being interrupted because of mining. Scientists are still trying to fully grasp all of the potential consequences of this practice, but one primary concern is that of the sediment plume, which could result from the trawling of the seafloor. Alongside this and other unknown potential ramifications, there are a lot of exciting scientific discoveries that are waiting for us down there. And so the question now is, how might we take a more measured, conscious, and attuned approach to connecting with and relating to the space? One that goes beyond extraction, exploitation, and one that is more regenerative. And so our aim with Beacons was to create a sculptural system that would allow us to relate and understand the living beings that exist in the deep sea. Our frame as a species of understanding really began 50 years ago when we began to collect data within the CCZ. Despite our tradition, our longstanding tradition of relating to the sea in many ways, the history of the deep sea actually goes far beyond that, past the existence of our species, and all the way back and beyond 10,000 BC. And so we really tried to capture this scope of data through our installation, and also looking into the future to see how all of this mining potential could impact the next 30 years.
And so from this, we created a data tapestry, looking at across 20 different metrics and variables to try to tell the story of what this habitat is even like, from carbonate saturation rate to the substrate composition to the microplastics, as well as the macrofauna density and microbial abundance from 10,000 BC to 30 years from now. And this creates a timeline of histories that we were hoping to get to a relation so that you could actually have a one-on-one encounter with this data.
Each of these groups of data, these categories, is transformed into a beacon. And so over the course of several months, we prototyped, we made paper, we 3D printed and 3D modeled different ways that we could capture the sensorialness of the space through sound, light, and physical form, and created a symphony of sound that would tell the story of the CCZ throughout its history.
And from this, we end up getting something of a transmission of frequencies coming from us from this region, of the actual data that is occurring in this area, to help us to understand and to relate to it in a way that we might not have before, because maybe it's alien and maybe it's remote. And so our exhibit looks at what is the difference between the artificial and the organic, of how we can use science and technology to better understand these natural ecosystems that we both live within and are representative of these greater cycles, as well as the relationship between the individual and the collective of the greater networks that we're a part of, and how we can all make sense of it, hopefully through computation, as well as how can we even begin to relate to something that is so different from us, but at the end of the day, we're all interconnected. Thank you.
Let's get another round of applause for our Year 11 Creative Science Group. Thanks, everybody. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Hénaff. I'm a computational biologist by training and an artist by choice. And this year, I've had the singular pleasure of accompanying the Creative Science Group through their projects. And so as you see the rigor and sensitivity that they bring to their practice, integrating creative work as well as scientific protocols, it's no wonder that you can find their work in cultural institutions, nationally, internationally. You see some of their work displayed here. But these folks are doing science, creative science, and the knowledge that they're producing using these methods is valuable to the scientific community and also should be made legible as such. And so what we've done this year, for the first time, I believe, at New Inc., is to put together a collection of essays describing their work and published it in a scientific journal. The scientific journal is Biotechnology Design, and you can find some reproductions of the essays in this booklet here at the store. So I've got some questions for you guys. We've been talking about your projects for a whole year, so excited to share kind of these conversations with the group. And to start out, actually, this is a question for Alvaro and also EcoRove. You both ask questions about who gets to tell the story of biology and how that storytelling impacts agency of more than human organisms, in particular in cultural and political contexts. Can you give some examples from all the research and interviews that you've done of the storytellers that you've met along the way? What were the solid stories that you've heard? Or maybe what was missing also?
I could go first. So an organism that I introduced was Ustilago myadis, now Mycosarcoma myadis. On top of it being kind of like a food-related organism, it's also studied in scientific research, so it's a model organism. And one of the stories that I came across while in residency was just the shock of scientists that I told that I was going to bring this organism into the lab, because at that time it was right at the point where the USDA stopped regulating, banning the fungus from active research, and you had to be under a very strict kind of quarantine protocol. And then once he after that I talked to this scientist, and he was yeah, okay, no, so apparently from this month forward we're allowed to use it for whatever you want, so feel free to just use the organism. So for me it was just this kind of these relationships that humans artificially put within an organism, and how that kind of was reflected within how I could actually use it for research within the arts, which was just fascinating for me.
Yeah, well, with us, it also depends. There's different agencies that you engage with. Whenever it's a political entity, it's pretty much distorted for a political agenda that they want to tell. But we found one of them, and scientists just talk more about data and what they are gathering. But there's more stories behind these non-human beings, and the most interesting stories come usually from land stewards and foragers, where they know exactly the trees, how they react. If this year is going to be a drought, even if the scientists are saying no, there's no drought, some of these land stewards know that there's going to be a drought. And it's just knowledge of years of experience passed on from generation to generation. So it's very interesting to kind of look at all of that and see how each kind of group of people engage with species and kind of take the narrative on.
Thank you. Yes, there's so many other ways of knowing besides just the scientific method. Actually, speaking of non-neural memory and agency, I'd like to give a shout out to the work of Is Nater, who's also in this year's Creative Science Group, and you can find their work in the demo store. Next question, so for Wendi and Darren and SPOLIA also, Garrett. You each have made interfaces for more than human organisms. Those interfaces, however, are in a certain sense bound to the constraints of human perception. Can you tell a little bit about your ethical, aesthetic, choices in your design process, and how that has informed kind of the voice that you've given to these organisms, given the constraint of human perception.
Sure, I can start. I feel like our work, SPOLIA's work, as well as Wendi and Darren's work, is fairly similar in that we're trying to make the invisible visible. Because I feel for more than human design, that's kind of the central aspect of it. Maybe the difference, though, is that where I think biotopy is looking at the micro scale of how we understand things we can't really see with our naked eye, our work is more looking at the macro scale. So how do you actually start to understand these larger networks of systems that are incomprehensible to us because of our own human scale? And I think the big takeaway for our practice is that data can be a mediator for that. Because we have so much data collection, so much sensor networks occurring throughout the world now, the ability to analyze this data actually allows us to interface with it. So we kind of see artificial intelligence as an ability not to replace human cognition and human ability, but actually as a way for us to better relate to the wider world around us and the systems and networks that we don't understand.
Yeah, I think for us, there's just one of the big inspirations is thinking about not only microbial agency, but what we like to call microbial surprise, right? There's this long kind of canonical history of microbes being able to do things that we did not think were possible, dating back to something like penicillin being produced by a mold, or more recently something like CRISPR being discovered in yogurt bacteria. And so when we designed Biotopia, we deliberately wanted to keep it more like an open-ended game world, one where players can go and explore the kind of unbounded constraints of where and how these microbes might surprise us. And so even now, as we're kind of pushing forward the project into these next steps, going from not just multiplayer mode, but also thinking about what does a multi-micro mode look like. It actually goes from maybe this microscopic scale to something that does look more macroscopic in this kind of collective intelligence sense.
Thanks. So on the topic of philosophy of science, you should also check out Ishraki Kazi's installation, and also a shout out to Thierry and Seb from Morikana, who are also making interfaces for more than human organisms. Robin, you've also built something that helps us pay really close attention to things that can often be overlooked. But actually for this question, I want to ask you about how do you close the loop in bringing knowledge generated in the cultural context back into the sciences? It's kind of like swimming upstream, but tell us about it.
I think historically we've seen things go in one direction. We've seen science get informed into art and culture, and what we're trying to do is understand now how we can also learn from art and culture to inform the questions scientists are asking in the lab and to inform their hypotheses. I mean, academically, scientists learn from each other all the time in terms of the research papers, but how come we're not learning from how people are actually using things? And so I think when it comes to cultural interventions, for example, one of the problems that we have with health interventions, rather, is that we see huge drop-off rates. People aren't continuing to partake in these interventions that have been proven useful. And so then they're not necessarily helping people because people aren't staying engaged for them for long enough. So how can we actually build new interventions for people with art and culture and design so they're engaging and enjoyable? And then you find out from the data that you collect in the real world, on-site, in contextually valid environments, what's working, what's not working, how to iterate and improve it. And so I think that what we're trying to do a little bit is shift the basis of where the importance lies outside of the lab and placing the same level of importance in the real world settings with the real people to kind of even the playing field and have this continuous ongoing conversation.
That's why our abstracts are so important. Thank you all, and please a round of applause for Creative Science here.
Let's give it up one more time for the Creative Science track. Okay, we did it. DEMO2025 opening program has come to a wrap. We did it. We listened to so much juiciness. Notebooks are full, our brains are bigger, our hearts are full.